Now I'd like to have all of our speakers and panelists come up to the stage and join us, and we're going to have questions and answers and a panel discussion. And the speakers can even ask questions if they want, and the panelists, that's allowed. So I'm not sure if we have any questions right now or to start. And I'd like people, if they could, when they ask a question, to say their name and their company. So I guess I can start with a question. So could you just elaborate a little more on some of the, I loved the slide that you had with all the things you're doing around sustainability, William. You know, could you just talk a little bit more about that? I thought that was really interesting.
Well, in terms of sustainability, I mean, the water reclaim system that we have is part of that, but really reducing waste and the capabilities we have with the new plant to reduce waste are a big part of what we can do in terms of sustainability. But in terms of the impact to employees, the safety, and really the ability for just energy conservation. It's a different world for us now in terms of the amount of information that we have. So, yeah, go ahead, Randy.
Yes. So there's one other thing that's really neat about the plant compared to the old plant. The old plant, the steam boilers were coal-fired. The new plant, they're natural gas. But in addition to that, the effluent treatment plant, they're capturing the biogas off of the effluent treatment plant, and they were feeding that back to the steam plant to compensate and add to the natural gas. So they're using that energy. Now moving forward, they're actually going to change that, and they're going to take the biogas off of the effluent treatment plant, and they're going to run a generator, which is essentially going to send the power back to the effluent treatment plant, virtually self-powering that effluent treatment plant. Not quite 100%, but it'll go a long ways towards self-powering that portion of the plant. I think that's a great story too.
In general terms, to improve and address sustainability, really, you just have to continue along the journey of utilizing data to improve your operations, your productivity, efficiency, and quality, and those business drivers that you already have. And as you improve in those areas, you're going to also improve in terms of your sustainability.
One thing I would like to do is have the panelists that joined us, I want them to introduce themselves, because I forgot to do that. And I just want you to know what type of questions you can ask them. That would be helpful, I think. So do you want to begin with you, Ed?
I'll go first.
Yeah.
My name is Brian Murphy. I'm a senior account executive with Hexagon. I've spent over 30 years in the process industries, most of it as a control systems engineer, and then just recently moving over into sales. Came over to Hexagon with the PAS acquisition. So my expertise is in operational risk management and ICS security.
Randy?
I'm Randy Fisher with Rockwell. And previously I was in sales, and to balance Brian's shift into sales, I came out of sales, I guess. Part of sustainability or life cycle, maybe. I'm now in a market development role, so most of my career has been in some way involved in the pulp and paper industry, so I've got about 30 years experience in that industry from the sales side with automation and technology solutions.
I'm still on the dark side.
Okay, do we have some audience questions? Okay, if you don't, I have some more questions, actually. Keith, could you talk a little bit more about how quickly you can scale up for the next solution for your plant? That would be very interesting, I think.
Well, with the solution that we have, we're actually going to tweak a little bit on one side that will enable us to easily scale up. I mean, our plans are to put this in all our plants where we have the water data. So we'll be going out quickly. The expectation is each time we do it, we learn a little bit more to make it more efficient and be able to do it faster.
Does anyone else want to comment on that? Okay. So in designing your plant, you obviously had sustainability in mind. And were the goals that targets, how did you measure that? How did you set those and how did you measure it?
Well, we were committed to not discharge or draw water from the Fox River, so that was one of the major accomplishments that we wanted to achieve as part of our legacy there. But we've achieved our cost targets. I mean, obviously that's a big part of what we wanted to accomplish. And really, you know, our compliance standards. I mean, we had a strict set of compliance standards and standards that we would have to comply to as part of our environmental permitting. And we've been well under our environmental permits. And frankly, the emissions that we have in the new facility are significantly reduced from what we had in the old facility. So all that was calculated and planned, and it's actually gone better. Our reductions were even more than we had hoped for. So I think those were pretty easy to track and keep up with as we've gotten into operations. So it's been a big success.
Okay, I think we have a question from the audience. Yeah.
Yeah, hello, this is Richard Roque from Dow. Yeah, I got a question about philosophy that you use to differentiate between digitalization of greenfield assets versus brownfield.
Does anyone want to take that?
So the question is differentiation of digital transformation from a greenfield versus a brownfield, making improvements. Yeah.
Difference between those two?
Well, in a greenfield, you have to, I think the challenge in a greenfield is to try to come up with that full long-term vision plan initially, because you've got really one upfront chance to create that solution and vision and make sure that you've got everything in place that's going to support that long-term. In a brownfield, we see customers that do that in phases. And so they've got to start and figure out what is their long-term goal as well. But they get more opportunities along the way to make changes in smaller pieces. And so if there's something that they want to shift and change early on, they get an opportunity to do that before they're fully committed of ordering a full plant of equipment. In some ways, though, you have an advantage in a greenfield in that you can set that baseline. Everything's going to be on the same platform. Everything folds in, everything connects. A big challenge in a brownfield is the disparate data that's out there. And how do you migrate that, and what do you create first that is going to be your platform, and how do you move all of those other disparate pieces from mills that have grown organically? And we mentioned in paper specifically as a traditional industry, there are a lot of mills that are 100 years old that just have, I think, some of the original technology in the plant up to the most current technology in the plant. And how do you bring that all together? So I think those are a couple of the differences. Hopefully that addressed your question.
So is any other? Oh, you do have another question. Okay. Oops. Oh, okay. Wait a minute. So, it's not on. If it's not on.
Oh, okay. So that's exactly what we're struggle with at DuPont. A lot of our facilities are brownfield facilities. We do have some newer sections of plants, some newer acquisitions that we get, and it's easy enough to, when you're putting in a greenfield project, to have that already as a goal. When you've got brownfield, it very much is exactly as he said. You've got to look at piecemeal, what is going to get you the biggest bang for the buck. But along with that, as you saw from one of my slides there, was that you have to look holistically at the tool and see what else can you get, to see if you can get other benefits that can piggyback off of some of your other projects. And so that's kind of what we tried to do with with our implementation from the Hexagon software was to say, okay, this is where we know we're going to get hard value. But along with that, why not take advantage of other offerings and other things that we can blend in? And the trick is that yes, you can justify putting the tool in, but it's until you start to really weave it into your work practices and start to utilize the data, that's when you really get your true value out of it.
Okay, I think there's someone in the back that had the microphone next, and then we'll get to you.
Is this on? Yeah. Michael Cates with Nalco Water. This question's for Roberto. You mentioned the need for a bunch of data for compliance. Are you seeing an increase in, I guess, your data requirements when it comes to tracking sustainability or progress towards sustainability goals at DuPont?
Absolutely. We, DuPont in and of itself has created 2030 goals, like I'm sure many other organizations have out there. And against those goals, we are trying to, we've got metrics and we've got to report those against those sustainability. So, for instance, you may have seen some of the press releases that we've had where we've, in some of our businesses, we've started using renewable energies and those types of things. So as we're going into that, that's on the macro level, you've got the corporation that is doing certain things, but then that all pushes down to the micro level at each plant site where we've got leadership that is saying, hey, we have committed to doing these things. So we need to monitor additional electrical usage and then reduce that usage. And part of that is not only just looking at what is coming in the plant, but now we've got to say, well, now we've got a spike or we're trending in the wrong direction. Where is that usage coming from? So we're starting to see that we need to install more devices and provide more data to get all that information and to move into that sustainable direction. So absolutely.
Does anyone else want to comment? Okay, we have another question.
Hello, this is Ramses Verbrugge, Dow. I listened to your presentation, Roberto, about the digitization journey, and I see a lot of verticals that you have to cross to accomplish that. So could you speak a little bit more on how you gained support and commitment to embark on that journey across these verticals, both for the project, but also long term?
Well, it was very difficult. I'll say that it's not always easy to convince one leadership, but also the plant sites that putting in certain tools will be beneficial. And for that, it took a lot of just discussions. You have to tailor your discussions with leadership in one direction around those sustainability goals or what their views are, while at the same time, when you're going down to speak with operations folks, it's how are you going to help me on my day-to-day tasks? And in order to do that, it was just a very fine line, but ultimately, you've got to build that strategy in from your project in the get-go and understand the different audiences. So as you saw when we put that slide together, we wanted to make sure that it addressed both concerns. And that's what you kind of have to look at. You have to look at that macro level concern as well as the micro level. But it can be tricky.
Okay, do we have some more questions? Okay. Sure.
Just add one thing to that. It helps to have a partner that you're working with to go along on this journey that can help with the business case and all of the justifications that are needed, and that there's a marriage between the problems that partner solves and what you're trying to get accomplished, and that works out great when it happens.
Yeah, I'd like to add that it also helps within the organization to have the support at every level, from corporate down, right? So it's not, it's not you just trying to implement, a digital project and not having the full support. And so that whole digital transformation, if it doesn't start at the top, you really don't, and filter down, right, and everybody, buy into it, you're not going to be successful. You want to keep that going and continue to bring successful projects to the front.
So while I have you, Keith, I had another question for you. What
Okay.
about scalability? When you're getting ready to scale up for the next solution, how is that? Is that working out, or?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we're on our next plant at this point, and got the one after that identified. Again, the expectation is once we do the next one, that we learn more on how we did it, improve that until we can, really get it down to maybe a couple of months of being able to hit each plant.
Anybody else want to comment on scalability of their solution?
So scalability is definitely something you have to look at when you get into your digitalization processes. You have to look at those work practices and make sure that all of your facilities can follow those. You can't implement something that is very resource intensive at a very small facility that has no resources. So when looking at your strategies and looking at your tools and the work processes, even though you're trying to, you believe that you are creating something that is more automated and less resource intensive, that may be true in one environment and not so in another environment where you think it only takes 2 resources to implement this and to follow this process. Well, someone else may say, well, that's too many resources. So taking that into account and looking at that scalability is very important. And I would like to say that Hexagon did help us out with that, and we worked very well together to make sure that scalability was part of our solution, because we've got a multitude of plant sizes out there in the DuPont portfolio. So.
Okay, well, what about the future in all of these different plants? Why don't you tell me what the next steps are? We maybe start with you again, Roberto, and then we'll go down.
For us, it's continuing our deployment. When we deployed the solution at our facilities, we put it at one of our largest facilities or the largest facilities at Spruance, and then also at our Pontchartrain facility. And now it's just to expand that deployment for us to, again, start migrating to a standard work process, a standard tool for all of our facilities.
Of course, I echo that. But there are also other technologies that we can provide to Roberto that can help along the process and actually get to strive towards autonomy ultimately, right? And optimal sustainability. So, once we've got these projects executed, then there's other areas that we can attempt to address within our portfolio that will help Roberto move down the road.
I think one key is to try to eliminate manual data collection at all parts in the plant and processes and all that. Being able to automate it and put the data in front of the people that need it, the operators, engineers, our data scientists, in other areas. That's going to be critical. Having the data in a timely manner and being able to act on it is a key.
Do you want to comment, Randy?
I think one thing to keep in mind in any kind of digital transformation initiative is that it's all about the data and getting the data off the plant floor. And so one of the key pieces of that is the network, and you can't underestimate the value of having a good network design that's properly implemented in the plant that is secure, reliable, and expandable. And that's just critical all the way through every layer up to IT.
And I would just add that, you know, when you look at digital transformation, whether it's a greenfield plant or a brownfield, there's always competing resources. So without a good long-term strategy, right, you're going to be competing with the fact that we need new tubes for a boiler or a new tank and vessel. We've got, you know, aging infrastructure we have to deal with. And if you're in a brownfield plant, you know, those things have to be addressed. So without a plan for digitalization, a phased approach, long-term vision for that, it'll fall by the wayside, right? And you'll kind of be left behind. So I think you have to have a plan and you have to run those simultaneously because there's always going to be competing capital needs, you know, and those things you have to keep up with the boilers. You have to keep up with tank and vessel integrity and those sorts of things and the basics. But then we also have to make this digital transformation in order to compete. So a good long-term plan is important. If it's a greenfield, obviously trying to implement all that at one time is very difficult too, right? So you want to be sure you capture those capabilities where you can still do some sort of a phased approach that the workforce can handle and understand and adapt to and change to. So that would be my advice.
So do you think in general that, and for all of you, that the digital transformation has made you more competitive, had a strong competitive impact?
I would say so, yes, absolutely.
So I don't know if there's any more audience questions. If not, we're almost to the end of our session. So what I'd like to do is go down the panel and have each of our panelists and speakers give you one or two key takeaways from this session. I think that's important. Roberto?
For me, through this entire process, I think it's that exactly what you said was you got to have a plan. I'd also say you've got to, you know, like I said, keep your tools are just tools. You've got to make sure to have your work process. You got to make sure that you train. And through your project, something that would also help you, I was just thinking about is documentation. So you put this in here, you want to validate what benefits you've received, but also continue that documentation, build that into your process so that you can create those metrics that will help to further future projects and future deployments by having that documentation there, the documented benefits. It makes it go much better with leadership.
Brian, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I'd just like to kind of reiterate something that Roberto had in the big red slide, and it's again echoing what he was just saying as well. That if without the work process in place, then technology is just an unused tool. It's shelfware. So you know what we like to do is help our customers to enhance the work processes and leverage our technology in order to do that, so that they can drive towards their desired business goals. And that's what it's all about. That's what is going to provide benefits for everyone and sustainability.
Keith?
Yeah, so clear goals for sure. Set those goals, look at those in a timely manner, if you know, monthly meeting with the team, whatever. Hold the team accountable to achieve those goals. You know, try to minimize issues quickly and get buy-in from everybody involved.
Randy?
I would advise companies to be dedicated to the digital transformation, and by that I mean dedicate the right amount of resources that are the appropriate resources to make sure that there's enough initiative behind the effort, and not be afraid to fail. And if you're going to fail fast, but continue to move on that initiative and keep moving forward.
William?
And I would just say that, you know, be sure to engage the hourly workforce, operations and maintenance employees early. We tend to come up with great ideas and establish, you know, a new protocol and a new software, and then we roll it out. If we would take the time to get hourly employees involved, maintenance and operations early, frontline supervisors early, and have them involved from the project initiation, I think things go much better. And a lot of the communication issues and challenges kind of take care of themselves. So that's I think advice that we don't always follow for ourselves, but it would be very helpful if we did.
So unless anybody wants to add anything, I'd just like to, our time's just about up, and I'd like to conclude the session. First, I'd like to thank all of our speakers and their companies for allowing them to share this information and for some terrific presentations. So if you could help me with that. And I'd also like to ask the speakers and panelists if someone has a question that they'd like to ask them after the session. We have a break right now. They could, I'm sure they'll stay for a few minutes and answer any questions. So thank you very much to everybody in the audience. You were a great audience, although I think you were tired from the roller coaster.